say at the bottom. Yeah, 31 songs if you include both the Tortured Poets Department and the anthology, which I think actually the Tortured Poets Department, the anthology is just all 31 songs, so including like the back half of the album, and then the Tortured Poets Department is just the first half. That may just be a little extra to explain it that way, but yes. On the New Heights podcast, when Taylor announced the album, she seemed pretty intentional about saying that the new album's only 12 songs because she really wanted to kind of, laser focus in. And I think part of that was she received a lot of criticism on the Tortured Poets Department early on when the album first came out for how long it was. And that there are a lot of songs on it that, maybe they're all great, maybe they're fine, I don't know. I enjoy songs on that album. I enjoyed that album. I think where I was in my life when that album came out, I needed something like that. But I know a lot of people didn't like it or didn't relate as much to it, and it got a lot of criticism early.
I got where I was in my life. It came out like last year. You're acting like it was years ago.
I don't know. I was kind of down bad when the album came out, and
You were a tortured poet.
I was a tortured poet.
Just the way I interpret it. Maybe it wasn't the way you said it, but I was
No,
like,
that's so fair.
years.
No, the album came out in 2023.
2024, April 2024.
Was it
A year
24?
and a half
No, it
ago.
was 24. No, you're so
Yeah,
right. So dramatic. Oh my gosh.
exactly.
But we already knew that. We already knew that.
This is the Experience Podcast with me and someone else.
It's Elizabeth. I'm back.
Yeah, Elizabeth's back.
Yapping about Taylor.
Yeah, we'll see what we do with Tara because apparently she didn't do her homework.
Well, okay, like
Um,
I did, I just didn't write it down.
okay, yeah, well, you could do it off the cuff. You're fine. You didn't write it down for the last one when we did the Tortured Poet Society, which again, as we reiterated, was over 30 songs. I don't think you
Correct.
wrote anything down for that one.
No, I didn't write anything down. And I only have 12 songs to remember this time, so.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to see. Hold on.
I did have a
I'm
pretty
pulling up.
cute little album release party, except for it was only going to be for 3 of us, and then one of my friends couldn't come because her mom came into town early, so then it was just 2 of us. But album release party for 2, still very fun.
Okay, okay. And how was the party itself?
Well, I mean, it was pretty chill, so the first time that I hosted an album release party, I invited people to come over at like 9 or 10 and we watched a movie. And then when the movie ended, we just hung out until midnight when the album came out. But this one, since it was more low key, I kind of just prepped in the evening and cleaned and did chores. And then my friend came over like 11:45 maybe, right before midnight. And then we had like our snacks and listened to the album right when it came out. I don't think we actually got it playing until closer to like 12:03, 12:04 because, Spotify immediately broke because everybody was trying to listen to it at the same time right when it came out. But I put like up a little sign that said that's Showbiz Baby and some balloons that matched the album cover. I did build a champagne fountain because I'm extra. That was pretty fun. So I got like little plastic champagne glasses and then hot glued them together into the tower so that way there would be, stability to the structure. And then I bought a submersible pump and ran tubing up to the top champagne glass so that it would flow in a closed loop system. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, only you would do that. You turn an album release party into like some nerd experiment.
Yeah, I really said, you know what? I'm gonna use my engineering degree for something today. I was pretty
Uh,
excited about it. It was fun. And it was easy to do. I think I spent like less than $30 doing it. So
okay. Are you gonna get future use out of it, or
I didn't get rid of it, but I don't really know what I'm gonna use it for at this point. However, I'm pretty attached to it because
Mhm.
it was fun to make. So I don't know. It's currently still sitting on my kitchen table. So I'm not sure where to put it in still. I think it's gonna get moved downstairs to my storage locker.
How was Halloween?
Halloween was good. It was very chill. I dressed up as Snoopy, dressed as Joe Cool, but I went to Washington, D.C., and everything was closed. So I really just went to go visit my friend who lives near Washington, D.C., and we hung out at her house. So, yeah, I have no insights on my opinions on the city because I still really haven't seen DC. I've been through it, I guess, 3 times now. When I was young, my family drove through. We spent like a long lunch basically. Saw the White House, walked to the National Mall, had lunch, and then kept going to our destination. And then two 2 years ago, when I was driving between Schenectady and Atlanta, I stopped with the same and stayed at the same friend's apartment. She lived in Arlington at the time. And then that morning, because it was really close to peak cherry blossom season, I left her house early because she had to go to work. So I left right after she left for work. And then parked at one of the little parking lots near the tidal basin and did like 2 laps around the tidal basin and then finished my drive. So that's my only experience in DC. I've seen the big monuments, but I haven't done any of the museums, which I would like to do at some point.
Well, they're all free. Well, the Smithsonian ones are.
Yep,
So
they're just not open. Maybe by
you
the
can.
time when's this podcast gonna air? Well, maybe the government will be unshut down by then. They'll have
This
passed the
will
budget.
air on the 18th.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. The government has passed the budget by the time everyone's listening to this.
We'll see.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. It was nice. I had a very lovely weekend. I read a book. Ooh, ooh, shameless plug. So, Project Hail Mary, absolutely incredible novel. I loved it. I thought it was such a good book, very well written, just very interesting. Um, I will not say much about it outside of, I mean, you could watch the movie trailer and get some amount of information, but I think the best way to read that book is to not know anything about it outside of, it's like science fiction because the main character starts out essentially waking up with amnesia and not knowing what's going on. And I really liked learning with the character what was going on. I had a little bit of an idea what was going to happen because I'd seen the movie trailer since it's coming out in the spring before actually reading the book. But truly, I was not prepared for the twist. It was incredible. 10 out of 10, no notes. Would recommend.
Okay. That concludes the Elizabeth Reads a Book segment of the podcast.
I'm reading other books too, but I just think that everybody should read that book if you like sci-fi.
Okay.
Have you read the book, or have you read The Martian, or seen the movie The Martian?
I've seen the movie The Martian.
Yeah. So it's the same author who wrote The Martian, who
Mm.
wrote this. I was actually looking it up because I was discussing with one of my friends in my book club for this, and The Martian came out in like 2013 or so. I think
What
there was a like a
2015?
it was a not the movie, but the book. Um,
Oh, yeah.
it was like a
2011.
digital release, and then it went to print later, which I thought was interesting. I think it was his first book.
Yeah, he self-published it in 2011, and then in 2014 they actually
Yeah, then they printed it.
printed it.
So, and then they made the movie, which was, I thought, a pretty good representation of the book. Obviously, you can't include everything when you switch media, but I thought they did a good job. So I am excited for this book.
Are you ready for the movie next year?
Yeah, that was kind of the point, or I guess the motivator.
Okay.
So the first book that I read with this book club, which up to this point has pretty much been a science fiction book club because we've read The Martian, we read Dune, so like we're kind of sticking in that genre. My goal is to deviate from the genre with our next book. We were actually going to
Hmm.
deviate before reading this, but once they announced Project Hail Mary was coming to theaters, we bumped it up in the priority list because we read The Martian. Paul, one of my book club coworkers, loves Andy Weir and was saying how this book, Project Hail Mary, was even better than The Martian in his opinion, and so we should add it to the list of potential books to read. Basically, it got bumped up in priority so that we could read it before the movie comes out. So, all in anticipation of the book.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you in multiple book clubs? Was that
Correct. I'm in two book
okay?
clubs. My other book club is now reading The Color Purple, but I haven't started yet. We like just said we're starting it this. So I have the book. I need to start discussing the first third to half. I don't know exactly. Right after Thanksgiving break. So much to do.
You got a lot of work on your plate.
hmm I'm also listening to
How's
an audiobook, so
okay?
got a lot
Wow,
going on.
a lot of books.
A lot of books.
How was work? Are you generating electricity or
I mean,
just
I'm
general electric things?
generally electric activities. I think I would describe work busy. The materials world is a little crazy right now. Or maybe not that crazy, but um, tariffs are making my job harder.
I gotta tell you, and I know this isn't your part of the company or even I don't even think you're connected. Um, no, I guess you are. The branding, very confusing for people I work with. We were like, they're called GE, Vernova, Hitachi now. You got to include all the words in that
Oh,
order.
the nuclear business.
And
Yes.
yeah, and so they went from GEH, which is the was their abbreviation, to GVH. So when some people started writing it in like emails and other documents like
Yeah.
GVH, people were like, "Oh, you got a typo there. It's supposed to be." You're like, "No, no, no, no.
They're like, oh, what's that random V mistyped on
Yeah,
the
you meant
keyboard?
yeah, yeah. It must have no. Someone like was giving a presentation and they were like, "Oh, sorry, there's a typo on that slide," and someone else had to go, "No, no, no. That's definitely not a."
Yeah, no, GE Vernova, Hitachi Nuclear. It's like very confusing. So it was GE like kind of released nuclear, but then didn't really, and still tied in.
That's what I mean. Like,
Now
I'm
the
not
whole
even sure
Vernova
what
stuff
how
is
it's related to you, if at all.
it's we're under the same umbrella of GE Vernova,
Yeah,
and there's
but it's
12, I
that's
believe, individual businesses under that overarching umbrella. So it's a similar company structure to how GE was when it was still healthcare, the Vernova power business, and aerospace all together. Because then it was like you have aviation, you have gas power,
yeah.
you have
And
wind,
then
you have nuclear, you have healthcare, and now it's GE Vernova with grid and gas power and onshore wind and offshore wind and nuclear. So,
yeah, it's mostly the same, but they changed the wording enough to confuse the regulators,
well, I think my
which is
favorite is when people They're like, oh yeah, you work at GE Verona. And I'm like, you know what? Close enough. Just not
You
good
work at GE Veronica. Yeah.
enough. I actually was pretty confused by that the first day. I kept misremembering it as Verona. And then I made up like a silly little. Basically, I reworked the intro to Romeo and Juliet and made it about GE.
Okay, of course that's how you figured it out. Uh do, do we do we want to get to the album now or
Sure, we
um
can go to the album. I don't think I can play bits of it or we'll get in trouble.
no, don't do that. You know Taylor, she's
Yeah,
trigger happy on the
her
suing.
team will come for you.
Yeah. But we could say that you could say the titles,
Yeah.
obviously.
So, Life of a Showgirl. We did talk about this already. 12 songs.
I'll do some preamble while you're pulling it up. So I will say, yeah, it's only 12 songs. The longest song is only 4 minutes and 6 seconds. I'm not a fan. I know people love their 1,000 minute All Too Well and all that,
All
but
too well. Taylor's version, 10-minute version,
yeah, it's like, come on, get on
sad
with it.
girl autumn
Um,
version from the vault.
but you know what? I don't mind like a nice 3.5 minute song. Anyway. I don't know. Is she doing like any kind of bonus tracks or anything? I don't think
Nope,
so.
this is it. I mean,
I think
she has
this is it.
released some remixes, or like, yeah, she's released some remixes. So, in true Taylor fashion, capitalist queen that she is,
Yeah. But
um, there are multiple variants of the vinyl and the CD that all went out with different cover photos before the album even released. And then after the album released, she did even more stuff where she started releasing the like remix songs. So there's like A Fate of Ophelia, Alone in My Tower acoustic version. And then I think there's a acoustic to Elizabeth Taylor. I honestly couldn't even tell you all of the different things she released because a bunch of songs got acoustic versions, others got some other remixes. She did some voice memos on like the songwriting process that she, recorded in the studio as she's working through that. And I think all of those were released to CD. I don't think anything was released to vinyl. I can't remember exactly because it was also just an overwhelming amount of stuff. I have not purchased the vinyl yet, actually. I did like the album. Um, there's kind of verbiage that a lot of people. I don't know if Taylor has ever. I don't know if she was the one to coin this or if the fandom coined this. Where it originated, I can't remember. There's the term glittery gel pen song. So the songs she writes, people said, oh, she wrote maybe Folklore and Evermore with like a quill. And then she wrote Lover with a glittery gel pen. And then the Tortured Poets Department was a typewriter since that kind of fit the imagery, but that was more of like a quill song where she's being more of a singer-songwriter and forlorn versus that poppy, upbeat things you would write, if we go back to Lover, glittery gel pen, I like diamond rings, but I like shiny things, but I'd marry you with paper rings. Things that you would write in your little journal, being like, OMG, I love him. That kind of stuff. So, this album is that. Taylor described it on the New Heights podcast when it was announced. They did like a 2-hour long podcast. I did not listen to the whole thing. I just did a highlights reel for all of the key points. Gotta keep up on the fandom, but seem like I'm not that in it. Very dangerous line to walk a slippery slope into Swiftydom. Anyway, so on the New Heights podcast, Taylor described the album as the lyricism of Folklore and Evermore with the beats of 1989. So, for those of you who are keeping track, all of her most recent albums were produced by Jack Antonoff. And then also, what's his name? Aaron Dessner from The National. He was on some of the songs on the Tortured Poets Department and also helped to produce Folklore and Evermore. So those were the writers she'd been working with since I think Jack was on Lover. I think Jack was started at Reputation. That's if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, so she worked with Max Martin and Shellback on, I want to say Red and 1989, maybe separately, maybe both of them on both, some combination of she wrote with them on 1989. So that's the one that won the Grammy for Album of the Year. Now, we're back to modern day, and we're writing with Max Martin and Shellback again on this album. 12 songs, to the point, bangers, lyricism. So the album comes out, I'm at my listening party. The Fate of Ophelia was her first track on the album, and also the one she chose as the first single. It also got a music video. So over release weekend, what Taylor did is that the album came out Thursday at midnight, Friday morning, right on that cusp. Then, starting maybe Friday afternoon, she did this thing called the official release party of a Showgirl, where you go to the theaters, and in the theater, she did the music video reveal. So you went for like an hour and a half long theater experience. I think she came on the screen. They immediately played the music video. She talked about it a little bit afterwards. You got to see some behind the scenes of the making of the music video all throughout this time. And then she went through and talked about each track. And then for the songs, everything else that didn't get a music video, played the lyric videos. And I believe those are all the ones that are up on YouTube now. Some amount of that same footage as what's on the video cards if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, YouTube Music that pop up behind the song. All of that branding for it was then given in this movie, and then at the end they played the music video again. Would recommend. It's very theatrical, very fun. They did it in one of those kind of one-shot views where a lot of the scenes, it's all shot in one go, in the style, at least part of it, in that style of like old Hollywood. You've got like bossy, maybe is the right word for it, where you've got the big soundstage and all the dancers, and so that was pretty cool. The moving cameras and whatnot following the scenes. So rather than cutting a lot of things together, it's quite interesting. I would say probably a top tier music video of hers. It was very fun to watch. I enjoyed it a lot. So the Fate of Ophelia, the song, basically is her playing on the concept of Ophelia was driven mad by love in a sense, which you can argue, and I'm sure people will argue this forever, that Ophelia being driven mad by like the lack of her autonomy with all these men making decisions for her in the play, but essentially the basis of this song is, you saved me from the fate of Ophelia because I was alone in my tower, I was sad, and then you came into my life, and now I'm no longer melancholy. So it's a love song. Then the second song, Elizabeth Taylor, this one was an early favorite for me. It probably still is in my top songs on the album. Basically, she's singing about, I guess, equating it kind of to Elizabeth Taylor in the sense that Elizabeth Taylor, very famous actress, renowned, but is kind of remembered for the fact that she had 7 husbands, something of that sort. And the premise of it is, she wants it to work out. She's basically asking this person she's in conversation with, do you think it's forever? Are we going to be together? Yeah. So the actual verses of the song are kind of more melancholy if you really listen to them in the lyrics, but the chorus itself is very boppy. She goes into that, I cry. It's pretty excited. I liked it. It's good. I think it's a sleeper on the album. People seem to not be as into it as The Fate of Ophelia. The third song on the album, Opalite, that's also a fan favorite. It is light. It's very happy. The premise of it is her saying at the beginning, like, I used to focus on the past and missing old romances. And then I guess Taylor's description of it for herself is opalite is man-made opal, and she's commenting on the fact that you have to like make happiness and joy for yourself. And then also it kind of ties in, I guess, to Travis somehow, probably, because it's like love and you have this person, but you're making the joy for yourself, you're making that happiness, you're making it with someone else, but you're choosing it. Father figure, this one's an interesting one where it's kind of this conversation between two people where you see it kind of shift. So the concept of father figure is, the chorus is, I'll be your father figure, I drink that brown liquor, I make deals with the devil. The clean version is because my check's bigger. And so you have this conversation where you can imagine like a young, earlier career musician, starlet, however you want to say it, and then their manager, mentor type person kind of talking down to them is that I'm the father figure. And then as the younger person kind of rises, then they come back and are like, no, I'm the father figure. Which was something that I didn't, at first I was kind of confused by the songs. It seemed to kind of juxtapose. And then after seeing the movie and that explanation, I was like, oh, okay, I think I see that now. So that made a little more sense after that. People seem to like that one. Eldest Daughter's track 5. People typically associate track 5, Taylor Swift, with like absolutely gut-wrenching songs. And in some ways it is. Kind of commenting on the strife of being an eldest daughter, I suppose. And really kind of, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, her commentary on it was something to the effect of giving up other people's opinions of yourself, and when you are striving for people to, you care so much about what people think, but really you're just uncool, like you want to seem cool, like you don't care, but really care so much. And kind of giving up that control and just being like, yeah, I'm not cool. Ruin the Friendship. That one is one that I would describe as the sleeper sad one on the album. Basically, people are speculating that it's about one of her friends from high school. They also think that it's the same song that Forever Winter is about. I don't know if that's confirmed. But essentially it's, you have a best friend. Taylor's advice is ruin the friendship because you never know what's going to happen. And then at the end of the song, it changes from her reflecting on that time in the past when she wishes she would have ruined the friendship, and then she's like, now you're gone, and I'll never know. And so, in the song, the person is dead by the end. So she never got an answer, which is why she's telling other people now to ruin the friendship, because at least you'll get an answer. Actually Romantic, this one is kind of spicy. So, when you hear the words actually romantic, you think, oh, this is probably going to be a song about Travis. Wrong. This is a song about her clapping back at a hater, where she's basically like, you're calling me boring, and you're talking all these bad things about me, but actually all this effort you put in, it's to the point where it's kind of romantic. All this effort you put into hating me. You love me so much that you hate me all the time and you think about me, and that's even more than men are putting in, so thank you. So that's romantic. So it's kind of a snarky way, facetious perhaps, of commenting on that. Now, where it gets spicy is there's discourse on the internet that people think this is Taylor clapping back at Charlie XCX for Charlie XCX making a diss track about Taylor called Sympathy is a Knife. Now there's a bunch of people who are in this camp that this is a drama that's happening. And then there's a bunch of other people who are saying this is not about any of that at all. So You can think what you want. I think I'm in the camp of this is not drama. I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not going to lean into it. But that's what I know. Wish List is Taylor basically singing about songs. It's a song about her kind of saying she's at this place where she has all these things and people strive for all these things in life, but all she wants is the partner. So she sings about people wanting to play for Real Madrid. She sings about people wanting to be on a yacht and have that fancy celebrity life. Very extravagant luxury. But she just wants this person who she's singing about, Travis, and she wants that cul-de-sac, family and kids, white picket fence kind of life. So that's that song. It's kind of sweet. I feel like this one is a song for me that I thought was like kind of on the border of like really sweet and kind of cringy, but I think it just depends on the mood you're in, at least for me, how you can perceive it. And then the next song, Would, Taylor said in the movie thing, this is a song about superstitions. So in the song, she does talk about, knocking on wood, she's plucking petals off a flower, he loves me not. It is not about wood. It, like, low-key the whole song is one giant euphemism. Like, she says, and you can maybe think it's about superstitions until she hits the line. So she goes, red wood tree, it ain't hard to see, his love was the key that opened my thighs. And we're all like, okay, Taylor. We get it. You're getting some. Good for you. Very interesting song. If she just didn't say that, then maybe you could think of it as something else, but she did, and yeah. The internet discourse about that is just, everyone's like, wow, Travis Kelce, good job, buddy. And in fact, on the New Heights podcast, Travis and Jason Kelce talked about that, and he wouldn't admit to it, and then Jason was making jokes about how he's like more of a Japanese maple than a redwood, and then Kylie Kelce, his wife, changed her bio on Instagram probably to say big fan of Japanese maples. I just thought that was really funny. The next song, Cancelled. This song had the most Reputation kind of vibe and would be, in my opinion, the closest thing we're probably going to get to a Reputation vault track at this point. I just don't feel like Taylor's going to give us that music. I'm kind of disappointed by it, but she got her masters back, and there's not really a reason for her to release the Taylor's versions anymore. However, knowing that the vault tracks exist and it was a thing and she was planning and doing it, it kind of hurts that we didn't get it. Anyway, I would say this is the song that would be closest to maybe being like that, and she's basically saying she likes her friends. The words are, good thing I like my friends canceled, and so it's kind of commentary on, some people think it's about Blake Lively, some people think it's about someone else who I'm not remembering their name now. I don't really know if it's about, or it's not really about Blake Lively, because their friendship had a falling out over her and Justin Baldoni's legal battle. And the song is more saying, I stay friends with people when they're canceled, and I think it's her having her group that stayed with her and stood by her side when she went through all that media cancellation. So I think it's just commentary on that. Who knows? And then Honey is a play on the word honey, how you call a partner honey. And in her past, all of the times she'd been called honey or sweetheart or other words that you can call a partner, it had all been in a very negative sense, like, oh honey, that skirt doesn't fit you, sweetheart. It was all negative, and how now that she's in this relationship, it's turned into a positive word coming from that partner. And then the final song, The Life of a Showgirl. I love this song. This is obviously the title song off the album. Features Sabrina Carpenter. basically telling the story of an actress named Kitty who performs and then in New York or wherever, kind of in that whole, once again, we're going back to this Fosse imagery of the big stage, you've got all the performers, everybody's dancing in sync, the little costumes, and maybe like a life preserver in their hands or some kind of stick, the head caps. Think like synchronized swimming, 1950s maybe. And Taylor's character goes to see the show and is saying to this main lady who's a performer, you have this glamorous life, I want this life. And the performer's saying, no, you don't. You don't know this life, you don't want it. So that's verse 1. Verse 2 is Sabrina Carpenter. Similarly describes someone else who wants that glamorous showgirl life. And people are saying, nope, that's not what showgirls get. That's not glamorous. It's hard work. And then in the bridge, she basically is saying how she didn't take the advice, she paid her dues, she did the hard work, and now she's a showgirl. And so when you go into the last chorus, it shifts into this, now I know the life of a showgirl. So we start out in the first choruses, they're like, you're so sweet, thank you for so she gives her flowers, you're living my dream. She's like, you're so sweet, but you don't know the life of a showgirl, and you're never going to. The more you play, the more you pay. You're too soft. You don't know this life, and you don't want to know this life. But then at the end, it switches. Once she's finished out the bridge, she's paid her dues. She's at the top of her game. She's saying, everybody wants me to people are envious, they want to kill off the head girl, not really kill off, but that whole dancer envy where they're like, ugh, I just wish she'd fall so that I can go on stage and be in the lead. And they just want her to hurry up and move on so someone else can be in the spotlight. But she can't because she's immortal and she's reached this pinnacle. And so now instead of someone saying to her, you don't know this life, she says, thank you for the bouquet, because people are giving her the flowers now. And I know the life of a showgirl. I'm married to the hustle, hiding the pain underneath the lipstick and the sequins and the lace, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And then she's like, thank you. Now I do this. And then at the very end, there's an outro where I really liked the way she did this, because the album itself, a lot of people had negative comments saying, this doesn't detail the life of a showgirl. I was a showgirl in Vegas, and this was nothing like my life. But if you take 5 seconds to listen to anything Taylor ever said about the album, it was about her life while she was performing the Eras Tour, while she was being a showgirl. So, no, it's not going to be universal to all showgirls. It is very specifically Taylor going through the Eras Tour and the progression through her life with everything that happened during that. So she actually closes out the album with the outro from, originally I thought maybe it was recorded in the studio, but I think there has been confirmed information shared that it's actually the outro from Toronto Night 2, which I believe Sabrina was at. And so you hear, as the song is fading out, Taylor saying thank you and good night from that show. So she goes, thank you for an unforgettable night. We'll see you next time. Give it up for the band and the dancers and, of course, Sabrina. Sabrina goes, I love you, Taylor. And she goes, that's our show. We love you so much. Good night. So I really liked how this album represented her experience. We're seeing her point of view from the Eras Tour. And then she closed it out the way she closed out the show, because it was a show. So that's all I got.
You say that's all I got, but you've been going for over 20 minutes now.
Yeah,
And I gotta say,
at one point, I was really yapping. That was a big
no,
yap.
it's fine. It's fine. I'm not saying it's a problem. Well, it is a bit of a problem. I think you know a little too much. I think,
I think
um,
I do too. But I can't get out of the life. I'm married to the hustle, Daniel.
I know. You can't now. I mean, at this point, you got it. Especially if she keeps doing an album every year. I mean, come on.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think she is. She just got engaged. She just put out this album. She just finished the Eras tour. I think she's gonna take a break for a little bit and plan her wedding and enjoy
You
that.
think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. She doesn't strike me as an artist who can just stop creating, if that makes sense. Maybe she'll
Hmm.
eventually slow down on the release of albums, but I would be very surprised if she fully ever stepped away from the industry. I think she would be involved in some sort of way. Maybe she runs a studio, maybe she tries producing. As she's continued on in her career, she's started directing her own music videos, and she'll have other people, but she has been more involved in the creative process. And I think a lot of that comes down to ownership and rights and stuff, and the battle that she did have for her masters. She wants to make sure that she owns these things because that is her IP at the end of the day. That's her creative outlet. That's what she's worked for. And I think, artists should own their music. They should own what they create. Um, and she's a very big advocate for that. So that's my 2 cents. Obviously, I hope she keeps putting out music, but I would not be surprised if there's a decent break because she's done so much recently. It's been a lot, you know? During the Eras tour. So she started the Eras tour in 2023, maybe even
That sounds right.
2022. I think she may have started it in 22, like at the end of the year. Toured through, maybe it was early 23. Either way, she started this
I can
tour,
get it for you.
starts going on this world
23.
tour, puts out the Tortured Poets Department partway through the tour, adds on the Tortured Poets Department set to the tour, finishes the tour, at some point in the middle of this tour either starts writing the new album or she finishes it once she finishes the tour. So we get an album in 24, we finish the tour in 24, and then in October of 25 we have a new album. That's insane.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of artists do write while they're touring, though. You know?
I mean, I'm sure that's when they're, having big creative energy.
Yeah.
But interaction with the fans, I'm sure, fuels a lot of artists. So, I mean, they kind of have to. Touring is what makes you the money. But you have to have songs to tour at the end of the day.
Yeah. Although that's not fair. She could just do like an
She could
old
rest on her
songs.
laurels for literally the rest of
Yeah.
her life, and people would still go
Yeah.
see her play.
She has enough songs. It's not even like,
Yeah, she could
you know.
do. I mean, the Eras tour was brought about because originally she was going to do in 2020 this thing called Loverfest, where she was doing, it was kind of a limited tour of sorts, but she was going to go around and tour for the Lover album. And then COVID, and then we get Folklore and Evermore. So Lover came out in fall of 2019, Folklore and Evermore, I want to say August and November, maybe September
Do you want me to
of
figure that out? Hold
2020.
on. Let me see. Folklore was July,
Oh, July. See? Crazy. Yeah, so it
and
was
Evermore
July.
was December. So July and December. So,
Yeah. So that was very short between the two, but I mean, it's COVID. There's no other stuff happening. So at this point, now she has 3 albums out, and then she released Midnights before she started the Eras tour. And because now she has had 4 albums come out since she last toured, that's, I think, how she came up with the idea. Because at some point, you start combining all these albums, and people are like, oh, she's going to have Folk Ever Lever Fest or whatever. And they'd come up with, like, some kind of mishmash name of all of them
yeah.
and how Taylor could name the tour, the impending tour, that everyone knew she was going to go on. And that's why she did the Eras tour. She already had 4 albums that needed to be toured.
And to be fair, she's changed genres more often than most artists.
Very
It feels
true. She
like.
started out in country. She made the jump. So her self-titled album, Taylor Swift, Fearless, and Speak Now all fall into that. I want to say country. She was
Yeah,
still
all
in
those Speak
country.
Now kind of leans into there's some like pop rock,
There
country
are
rock.
some pop rock songs. I would not call them true poppy. Honestly, Speak Now kind of gives that like early 2000s angsty emo pop rock. A
That's what I
little.
mean. Yeah, it's got well some of them, some of the tracks
Some of
do.
them, not all of them.
Like which one? Like The
But when
Story of
she,
Us, I think. That's what
yeah.
I'm thinking of. Anyway, yeah. So that and then
And I mean, on Taylor's version of Speak Now, she did do a song called Electric Touch with Fall Out Boy. So, right in that genre of Fall Out Boy. And she also did one with Hayley Williams. So, very much she was doing country, but she was kind of in with those guys in that
mhm.
sound. Then Red is when she first started breaking out of the country thing. There's maybe some country elements in the album, but you very much can sense the pop. 22, We Are Never Getting Back Together. That was the big one. We Are Never Getting Back Together. That people were like, oh my gosh, she's leaving country. Can
Mhm.
she even
And
do this?
that was the first song released on the album, wasn't it?
I believe it was. I believe that was the first single. And everybody went crazy. And then 1989, that was pure pop. That was 80s synth
Mhm.
inspired pop. Won the Grammy. Then Reputation, pop, Lover pop, Folklore and Evermore, indie singer-songwriter. So like a little poppy, maybe folksy in a couple songs. Midnight's back to that kind of 80s derivative pop. Not quite 1989, a little bit more synthy.
Yeah,
Tortured
it's
Poets
much more like
Department,
bedroom pop Midnight's is.
yeah. Almost like pop leaning on house, lo-fi. Mm,
Yeah, that's kind of where I was get somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of was trying to get up with like bedroom pop. Like
kind of
low, I
music you
guess
listen
lo-fi.
to, like you put on your record player and you stick your feet up in the air and you just kind of,
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like very niche maybe, but that's what I'm thinking of. Then Tortured Poets Department. That's just it's singer songwriter beast. It's poppy, but a little bit more mellow. And then Life of a Showgirls. That's pure pop. She's 100% back in her pop girly era. So you have a lot of people that gravitated towards Taylor when she did Folklore and Evermore. They were like, I don't know how I feel about Midnights. And they were like, ooh, yay, I love Tortured Poets Department. Because that kind of falls more into that similar vibe. And then you have people who love the pop. They don't like the other ones as much. And then you have people, and every time she puts out an album, people are like, oh, she's a flop now. This is terrible. This is nothing like her last album. And I do it every time. When Tortured Poets Department came out, they were like, why isn't this more like Midnights? When Midnights came out, they were like, this is a total 180 from Folklore and Evermore. And similarly, this is a total 180 from Tortured Poets Department. Because the discourse around it, like I said, very negative reviews. And I believe even some music reviewers who came out with negative opinions on the album at first, after sitting with it for 2 weeks and actually listening to the album, because how can you digest 31 songs in 4 hours? You can't, because you can't even barely listen to all of them in 4 hours. Maybe twice. People came around more to the Tortured Poets Department as an album. But there's definitely something to be said for, did she need 31 songs? I think, and this is me, she was kind of in that state of like, I just broke up with my long-term boyfriend, finally got together with this guy that it's always been like a right person, wrong time. Maybe, kind of a rebound, maybe just like trying to like lean into that whole, maybe it's just because we were always meant to be together. But Matty Healy obviously was just not. He was very controversial, and then it honestly probably was like less than a month I mean, the song Fortnite makes me think that maybe even their official relationship was like 2 weeks long. I think it was a little longer than that because we did have him appearing at the Eras tour and then playing with Phoebe Bridgers when Phoebe and Lucy and what was their band called? I don't remember.
No.
But that band that had all of them in it, he played with them on the stage as an opener because he was good friends with, I want to say, Lucy. And then that ended and she kind of went manic. That's what I. And then she just needed to like vomit out all of these songs to process all of that. So while we ended up with a lot more songs about Maddie Healy than about Joe Alwyn, I think that was just probably hurt more. And I also stand by the fact that Midnights was Joe Alwyn's breakup album because that relationship was crumbling then. Even though that's, not what was the messaging at the time. That's just my thoughts. Because it felt like that to me.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to, well, we can wrap up the podcast here soon. We've done
Yeah, we should probably.
over 30 minutes on
I think we've done too much Taylor Swift, and if you made it to the end, good for you. So sorry. I am the way that I am.